Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Listen, if you are like me and for the life of you, you have a hard time piping flowers on a cake, this tutorial's for you. I'm going to show you how to make 3D piped buttercream flowers on a cake the easy way. But first, let's get started. In all honesty, this is not the cake that I decorated. I did not film the actually filling and crumb coating and final coating of, well, actually I did the final coat, but I didn't film the filling and the crumb coating of the cake. So I just decided to go ahead and throw this footage in of a different cake, but it's the same process. Only thing different in this cake is that my filling was already dammed or thickened with extra buttercream, so I did not do a dam, but typically I would tell you to do a dam of thickened buttercream before you do your filling so that your filling does not squeeze out the side. Since I had thickened buttercream as the filling to begin with, I didn't have to worry about it. So a crumb coat is what it is a thin coat of buttercream that locks in your crumbs. And you'll want to do this before your final coat of buttercream. Now, as you progress in your skills, you might get to the point where you don't need to do a crumb coat. Every once in a while, I don't bother with a crumb coat. If you chill your cake, that helps to keep your crumbs next like on your cake, but that's for a little bit more advanced or just a little bit more practice. So each tier, there's 2 tiers here. Each tier was chilled after the crumb coat, and I do 10 minutes in the freezer or 20 minutes in the refrigerator, approximately. Depends on your fridge and your freezer, but that's just kind of a generalization. So once it is chilled to the point where you can touch it and the buttercream does not stick to your finger and you do not leave a mark in your buttercream, you can do your final coat. I guess you don't have to chill if you don't want to, but me personally, I prefer to, because a crumb coat that's just at room temperature and just kind of crusted over, to me, is a little bit more too delicate. I do like to refrigerate or chill in the freezer. So each tier was again put into the freezer after the final coat, and I just add straws in between the tiers that are the same height as the cake and a little buttercream to get it to stick. Now, I am using 2 tips. There's only 2 tips involved in this technique. I am actually adding a little bit more powdered sugar to my buttercream that I'm going to be piping, because you want it to be thick enough that it holds its shape as you're piping it. You don't want it to get soft, otherwise your buttercream will get flat. You don't want that. So it's kind of a trial by error to figure out the thickness. I'm trying to think. If I have 2 cups of buttercream, or say like in this case I have about 1.5 cups of buttercream to 2 cups, I would add probably about 1 cup of powdered sugar. Kind of start there and see if that works for you. Everybody has a consistency that they prefer. That's what kind of generally works for me. But I'm using 2 different petal tips. Just your regular petal tip. One is larger than the other. You can get large versions basically of each tip. So all I'm doing is your basic petal movement. You just start with, you have your thick end towards the parchment paper that I just have stuck to my surface with a little bit of buttercream so it doesn't move around. Have your end of your tip towards the bottom or towards the top, and your thick end towards the bottom, and you just do kind of a half circle movement with your wrist, keeping the bottom of the tip on or very close to the parchment paper. Now, I did this with both size tips, and all I did was put them in the freezer after I had them piped. But I will show you after I pipe them, you can clean them up a little bit. See here on the left how you have that little bit of extra buttercream? I didn't want that. So I'm just using a dampened paintbrush. I've only used my paintbrushes on buttercream. I don't paint in that way in general. You know what I'm saying, with acrylics or oil paints, I don't really do that. So all of my brushes you'll see me using have only been used on cake. So I just dip the brush in a little bit of water and then just kind of clean up that edge. And once it has started to crust over, There's kind of that in-between stage from where it's soft and then it's almost crusted over, but not quite. That's your sweet spot to clean that up. And after that is when I put them into the freezer. Now I'm marking the stems. This is another little hint. I really seriously cannot stand, am very insecure and feel very untalented when it comes to painting or piping directly on a cake that's already been put together. I feel really insecure about it. But the buttercream that I use in this, it's a medium tip. I'd say this is probably a number 3 round tip on my piping bag. That buttercream I thin down just a tiny bit because you don't want it to be too thick. It's easier for me to pipe when it's about, probably peanut butter consistency. There I showed you. I left that in there where I mess up right there. And it's very easy if your buttercream is firm to just kind of use that same wet paintbrush, dampened paintbrush, to just wipe it right off. So that should give you a little bit of confidence knowing that if your surface is firm and chilled, that it's very easy to clean off when you make mistakes. You'd think that would work for me, but I'm still insecure. To attach these petals that are chilled, I just pipe a circle of buttercream and very simply just attach your petals that way. Now, if your buttercream starts to get a little soft as you're working with it, because it does take a little time, just pop it back into the freezer for about another 10 minutes. That's really all it takes. So I'm using my larger petals on the outside. This is why I pipe 2 different sizes. And then I go back in on not every flower, maybe every 2 to 3 flowers. I'm just putting it into the freezer. Into the fridge at this point to just to kind of firm up, set up so that your petals are not moving once you're doing your inner row of your smaller petals. That was a roundabout way of getting to this point. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I'd put it in the refrigerator for maybe 20 minutes or so before you do your next row of petals. And then it's the same technique. I just pipe some buttercream in the middle. You don't have to do a circle like that. You could just put your tip in the middle, close to the surface, but hovering above it a little bit, and just pipe a round dollop. That would work just fine too. I just didn't want it to get too thick, because sometimes when you pipe a dollop, it can add some height to it, and I didn't necessarily want that thickness behind my petals. So that's why I opted for that. And I'm kind of making sure that those petals are not too flat against the first row of petals. Just trying to give it that dimension, that kind of 3D appearance. And I decided to go ahead and add some to the top also, just to kind of continue that design. And to fill in the spaces, I just used my large tip with my extra buttercream and added just singular little petals here and there, just to, like I said, just to fill in that empty space, make it a little bit more cohesive. And then I'm adding my extra row of petals on the very top ones. Those kind of firmed up while I was working on the petals on the sides. And now for the final touch, I'm just adding, these are just pearl dragées. I kind of use a mixture of, sometimes I use the tweezers, but I end up dropping them all the time that way. So I get very impatient, and then I end up going in and just placing them individually with my fingers. So right there, you'll just see me doing both techniques most of the time. But my hands are always clean and dry, so don't worry about that. And you could do this design any color you want. This was for a wedding, so we stuck with the white on white. Actually, it's white on cream. So here's our final product. It doesn't have a topper on there or anything like that. I'm not even sure if they added one at the venue or not. I don't think it needed it. But I added a ribbon to the bottom of the board to finish it off. That I don't always show you guys. I just use double-sided tape. So I hope you got something from it. I hope you learned something new. And we'll catch you on the next one.